we're also grateful and excited actually this evening to be able to share a mini documentary that the National Center for Lesbian Rights released last month, titled We Are Abundant, a queer vision of economic justice. So I'm going to invite you to get comfortable and we'll watch this short documentary in relationship with what we have just heard.
Wake up.
Wake up.
Despertemos.
Wake up.
1 in 5 gay people are in poverty.
Wake up. It's time.
It's time.
It's time.
Es el momento.
It's time to meet these injustices with love.
You are worthy of a new world, and you are part of creating that new world.
We
We have power. We have leverage.
We are the ones.
We are the ones.
We are the ones that we've been waiting for.
Things can change. We have the power to change them, and that change starts today.
If we look at the earth, we know that things move and exist in right relationship with one another. The seedling that a little bird will pick up from one place and drop somewhere else will then become the nourishment for another being. We live in a world of abundance. Just because I share something does not mean that then I'm lacking, because that person who I offered something, maybe they will be the ones that will offer that back to me, or maybe somebody new will offer something that I may need in the future. And so shifting from a scarcity mindset to a mindset of abundance allows us to imagine and to savor what is actually possible.
My experience as someone that grew up under the poverty line, and everybody was struggling, like we took care of each other, and like there was a big network where people often didn't have like a lot of money, but like we had a lot of joy and we had a lot of, love for each other.
I can't tell you how many times, kids just came to my house and asked us for food, right? And my mother was like, go in the cabinet and like, or if she had cooked, like, stay and eat, right? Or take out those steaks in the freezer or that chicken or whatever, send it with this kid down to, the house or whatever. That was just like what happened, right?
Even though there are a lot of hardships I experienced in that world, people are so much more generous, I think, when they're, living in poverty. It's like, we're all in this together. The struggle is real. Like, no one's trying to judge one another, and I think that is very much was embodied in my experience. And I think that's a big reason why I think I have such a huge heart for poor communities, because I was raised by poor people. Like, they're the ones who got me to where I am today. I can hold both, the pain and the trauma of growing up poor, but also understand what it meant to come together and not to give in to this notion that, there was nothing for us to give to one another and that we all had a role to play. And so I hope that by sharing my story, that people can begin to see the humanity of poor people and also want to figure out what is their role in ending poverty from our society.
Wake up.
There's actually 140 million people that are poor and low income in this country.
140 million poor or low income people who are just one emergency away from economic crisis.
Poverty is absolutely an LGBTQ issue.
There's 22% of LGBTQ community members living in poverty.
LGBTQ people are like 40% more likely to be in poverty than a cis person. Like trans people are like 2 times more.
Being queer and trans is inherently revolutionary, and that includes destroying an economic system that effectively puts people into poverty. And not only that, but thrives off poverty itself.
Yeah, our financial services system really punishes people for being poor. If you are poor, then that can really put you in a place where you're only being offered high interest credit, which particularly penalizes the poor.
And we certainly know that, no person who becomes a, billionaire or multimillionaire, whatever, did it without, particularly if they were educated, how they got educated, where they went to school, were they a legacy, right? Or did they inherit, right, a bunch of wealth and were able to then take that wealth and turn it into something else, right?
One thing that needs to be rethought about property is that it should not be considered an appreciating asset. That's because that results in land speculation as well as rent seeking from landlords, from frequently poor people, in order to then pay for their asset, which is then growing in wealth for them.
Feeling the shame and thinking that it is your fault to be in poverty only serves this system. We need to come together, we need to strategize together, and we need to join forces to improve the material conditions of absolutely everybody, because it's possible.
Every political system, economic system, right, for the course of human history has ebbed and flowed, fallen apart, something new has emerged. So just because we live under this particular system now does not mean that it will be here forever.
When we think about like LGBTQ rights, like movements that we have today, like all of those started with the poor. Like Stonewall was an uprising of the poor.
We all can get it done, right? And wherever you sit, right? In some ways, I believe what, Malcolm X used to say, which is, you don't have to be a radical and join the Nation of Islam, right? Or to be a radical, you can be radical and work at the post office. You can be radical and be a school teacher, right? You can operate from various sort of positions in terms of work or where you live or whatever. The question is, are you able to think about and operate from a position of valuing human life and the life of living things on this planet as a first and foremost sort of principle? And then everything then has to kind of, for me, flow from that, right?
Creo que sí puede pasar si todos nos ponemos o nos sincronizamos y deseamos lo mismo para este mundo. No hay que pisotear a nadie para poder sobresalir. Hay que saber vivir y hay que luchar por nuestros sueños.
Wake up.
I think there's a world where, we don't center money and we don't center greed and wealth accumulation. I think that we can accumulate other things like flowers, what I'm saying? Like, community. It can be friends, it can be a relationship with people. I think there's an ideal world for me is a world where like love is like literally at the center.
Like we all deserve to live in a society that not only recognizes who we are, but also that makes sure that we have food, housing, healthcare, transportation, clean air, clean water, community, art, culture, love. Every single human being not only deserves that, but needs it.
Well, what if we actually just ask people, what do you need? Like, and instead of having, TANF over here and homeless services or housing, Section 8 over here or whatever, give people the resources they need to take care of themselves. Period. End of story, right?
I would like to see the end of utilizing debt instruments in order to finance human needs such as higher education or housing.
¿Qué es lo que yo quiero ver en el mundo? Igualdad. Igualdad para todo. Igualdad para el respeto a los géneros. Igualdad económica. Igualdad de recursos.
We all must fight for the rights and the dignity of all of us.
Wake up.
My hope is that in this moment that we can tap into that revolutionary spirit, and a spirit that not only looks out for queer and trans people, but for all humans. Because at the end of the day, I think there's only one liberation movement, and that is a liberation for all human beings and to ensure that we live on a planet that's healthy and thriving. That is our calling.
Like how to live with each other. And so I think that like it takes discourse. It takes, like a good conversation, honestly. But it essentially is that energy of, we are the ones that are starting this movement, and like we are the catalysts of our own social change.
do what you can in your power to elect people and to push for the kinds of social policy that other people can live and be taken care of, and have meaningful work and have housing and have healthcare and have access to education and all of those things.
Every moment is important. Every decision is important. It is always the right time to do the right thing.
It starts today. It starts with walking down the street and actually looking at people in the eyes and saying good morning. We need to be reminded every day that we're human beings, that we have needs, and that we need to care for one another. In Spanish, we say en lo cotidiano, in the everydayness, is where the possibility of this world is born.
Amen, indeed. Just want to say, give a shout out and say thank you for the National Center for Lesbian Rights for putting together this money documentary. Please do feel free to share with your networks. It is definitely in our everydayness and in our collective story of history where we learned, practice, demand that this world of abundance be accessible to all. I believe that, and I'm holding on to that more than ever, as I also witnessed the horror and suffering that not only Moses laid out for us, that is endangering the lives of my LGBTQ siblings, but also the horror our siblings are facing in Palestine, Congo, Sudan, Myanmar, Kenya, Argentina, Atlanta, and so many other places where war, the rise of authoritarianism, climate crisis, greed are hurting us so badly. We continue to see how our communities, especially our working class communities, are being pitted against each other. The ruling class is working to separate our working class by any means possible. And we know that this divide and conquer approach of the ruling class is one of its age-old strategies. Yet, we also know that no segment of the ruling class has any real solutions to this crisis, but we do. We know we live in a world of abundance. We know that we are abundant ourselves, that we are expansive ourselves, that we are porous, that we're interconnected. And we firmly believe, in the words of Miss Marsha P. Johnson, that there is no pride for some of us without liberation for all of us. We know and have heard that people are hurting, that our infrastructures are crumbling, and that we cannot turn a blind eye to the suffering in our communities. Pride began as a riot, and we're committed to being out on the streets ourselves, to learning from our history while seeing our present, and organizing and coming together to bring forth the solutions we know our communities need, using the abundance that is already here.